go ahead and get started. The topic today is goal scoring, and specifically, we're going to talk about the psychological aspect of goal scoring. And there's probably nobody better in Canada to speak about this topic than our guest today, who is also the executive director of the NSCAC, John DeBenedictis. And I won't give too much away, but again, with regards to this specific topic, the psychological aspect of goal scoring, John has written a book called The Last 9 Seconds, and he also teaches a course which is actually aimed at players to help them learn some of the principles that he teaches in the book and apply them. And he's got an excellent track record with players from across North America who have taken this course and gone on to score more goals in the amateur club environment, in the college environment, and even in the professional and international environment. So I've read the book. I think it's fantastic. Of course, we're not going to give everything away here today, but we're going to talk about that topic. And so I'll say, welcome, John, and maybe if you'd like, introduce yourself, but why don't you let everybody know a little bit about what stimulated this idea for you to research this topic of, again, the psychological aspect of scoring goals, and eventually to write your book and teach your course.
Thanks very much, Richard. Yeah, for myself, I used to play as a goalkeeper, and I'm not a very big guy, pretty short for a keeper, and so you're watching the game from behind the net, and I remember and I've been coaching a long time, and I had one of my players who was the leading scorer in the old National Soccer League minor division at U18. From there, we ended up going to the Robbie final, where coach of the old Toronto Blizzard was the color commentator. He scored a goal, got picked up, and his life changed within 3 weeks, where he was just a kid playing U18, U19, won a scoring title, didn't really get noticed, but then got noticed in front of the key guy, and was training every day with the first team. And then, unfortunately, the North American Soccer League, which is where Coach Bob Houghton coached in with the Toronto Blizzard, folded, and a lot of dreams were shattered. I spent a long time with this kid in terms of. Oh, sorry about that. I forgot to mute my thing here, my phone. So I spent a lot of time with this kid, 4 or 5 years, to teach him how to score and whatever. And then Canada was trying to qualify for the World Cup in '98. I think it was 96, 97, and one of the final rounds there, where I thought that missed some great scoring chances or didn't take chances. And I was so frustrated because we came so close, but we didn't make the World Cup. And at that point, I said, I don't understand how, players aren't doing better at decision-making to score more goals. And so as a keeper, I could tell you so many times, I'm doing the sign of the cross, please, don't shoot, you're going to score. And they don't shoot, or they miss the net when they shouldn't miss the net, or they make all sorts of stupid decisions. And I just couldn't understand it. So I figured there's got to be a better way to get a player to, change his mindset and maybe score more goals. So that's when I started watching tons of goals, putting my goalkeeping background into a strategy that maybe I could work with players who had the skill of passing, shooting, heading, but maybe weren't scoring enough. And can I put something together that I can change their behavior in terms of what they need to do to score? And I found that, and I call the book The Last 9 Seconds, because I wanted to look at what's going on in the mind of the player, 9 seconds or less, in many cases it's way less, before a golden or a good goal scoring opportunity presents it. What decisions are they making? What are they doing? And then how can I coach that mental aspect so that leaves a very powerful impression on the player, as opposed to, the usual things that coaches we teach, because we'll watch a game, we all know the mistakes players make, and then we try and correct them. Then they make the same mistakes. So is there a better way? Now, I got a degree in physical and health education. So we did sports psychology, sociology, all those things. So, and I took a course called Perception by Dr. Ian Howard at York University, who also ended up working for NASA, because perception, there's all sorts of things going on in the head and how you see things, all the different feel, see, hear, all those things. And I thought that fascinated me. And I said, maybe I could take some of the information that he had on perception and blend it in and figure out in our minds why players maybe are making some bad decisions. And quite often, they make bad decisions because they see things differently than they maybe really are. So that's where it all started, way back in '98. And it wasn't until 2003, after watching goals and doing experiments with reaction where I started a course. I presented it to coaches who were all kind of surprised at what I had to offer. And then they all said, well, I should work with my daughter or my team or whatever. And in the first couple sessions that I did with a small group, everybody scored a ton more goals. And I said, whoa, I got something here. I better maybe write it down before I did any more courses. So I've only worked with maybe 300 kids over since 2003. But the number of kids, I say kids, 14 years old, right up to pro, anything younger than that, they're not ready, who've broken records, improved their game, sometimes not just scoring, but also other parts of their game, because we work on with psychology. And then that extra goal, sometimes at the right time, or a few extra goals, just get you that opportunity to maybe get asked to go try out for a team that you wouldn't have if you had a score. I have a girl who we worked with in Ottawa, and Mike Lanos, this School of Brilliance, brought me up. And this girl ended up breaking a record for University of Ottawa, scoring record. And then from there, she ended up going to France, playing professionally in France. And about a year ago, this is now, this is like 6 or 7 years after taking the course, she played 6 games last year. That's all they were able to squeeze in with COVID. Scored 4 goals and caught the eye of the coach of the Lebanese national team, because her grandfather was from Canada, and now she's playing with the Lebanese national team. So a few extra goals at the right time in your career could elevate you faster, I think, than anything else. So there's a long answer to your question.
A great answer, and I'll say I'm muted when I'm not talking, just because where I am right now, there's a lot of construction going on. So if you guys hear some hammering in the background, I'll apologize for that. And again, I just want to mention, to everyone who is watching live, please don't forget, if you have questions, you can use the chat box in the Q&A. Should have mentioned that before. But back to what we're talking about, John, and I think you raised an interesting point, which I know is also like one of the first things you talk about in your book. Which is, if we're talking about especially younger players who maybe haven't, I don't want to say mastered, because it takes a long time to master any technique, but don't, let's say, have at least the basic fundamental skills, dribbling, passing, shooting, striking a ball, those kind of things. Of course, it may be difficult for them to then deal with, some of the topics that you're talking about. We expect that when we're speaking about these topics, the psychological aspect of decision making and how that affects goal scoring, and then within the the 9 seconds or less before a goal is scored. So if players have sort of developed basic technical ability, what is it specifically then about scoring goals? Let's say that does scoring goals require really advanced technique? Is that something that is that the limiting factor? Or is technique not so important, and is it just really more about decision making?
Yeah, so I'd like to break that down. That's a great question. There are some goals that are scored by players using superior techniques and skills that only so many players have. Sometimes Messi scores a goal because he's just able to create something.
Yeah.
I think we saw a goal in Euros just a few days ago. Modric scored a goal, just hitting the ball perfectly. That's a high technical skill type of goal that not too many players can do. Sometimes, what's his name? Ronaldo
Yeah.
is able to out jump people, and his technique in hitting a ball, redirecting it a goal is just phenomenal. So, I'm going to say that there are some goals that only certain players can score. But let's look at the rest of the goals. And when we look at the rest of the goals, possibly another 80%, they can be scored by any player on the field that can pass, shoot, and head the ball. Sometimes any of the other players have the skills to form that skill to put the ball in the net. Players even on a reserve team are good enough. Even a decent men's team, the skill of scoring is sometimes the same as passing a ball to an opponent. You look at Jamie Vardy, I think it's a perfect example from Leicester. And, he's playing men's league soccer, but had the ability to score goals. If you watch him play, he's not a player who's going to take on too many players like Messi. He's not going to out jump players like Ronaldo. He's not going to outspeed players like Sterling.
He wasn't super fast either.
Right,
No.
but he knew what to do when the ball came. Gary Lineker was another. Gary Lineker always said that he was playing in the minors, I guess, in the lower divisions, and figured that at some point someone's going to get hurt. He's going to get his chance.
Yeah.
And when he gets his chance, he's got to score, or he's right back down. His career's going to start and end there. So he made a conscious effort to really study what the goal scorers do. And of course, when he got his chance, Lineker scored a lot of what you might call ugly looking goals, but he was always there. He even was quoted as saying, I was always in the right spot. Sometimes the ball didn't come there, but I was always there. And Lineker, as won, I think the
Golden Boot, right?
Golden Boot in one of the World Cups, 86, was it?
Yeah.
So that's psychology. So if you don't mind, I'm going to show you just a little goal we saw just a week ago at Euro, if you're okay with it.
Yeah, go ahead.
We'll share the screen here. We'll share the sound, I suppose. Hopefully we'll find, oops, not really what I wanted you to see. Here we go. So let's take a look at this goal right here. And you see that okay?
Yeah, it's loading. Here we go.
Okay, so this is the Ukraine, and this results in a corner. He's lucky to be there. Skill involved in scoring this goal. There's no superior skills here. There's nothing super special about that skill, the final touch, if I like to call it, in that goal. And here, and we're just going to watch the same goal, I think. Some of the goals that were scored, and I would say that as many. So those are, can you pass a ball? Yeah, you have the skill to pass a ball. Then that's great. So this is a very simple skill, simple redirect, maybe you might want to call it. And so, a good chunk of goals are going to come from skills that everybody already has.
So yeah, so I just if I can paraphrase, that technical ability usually is not the limiting factor for players to score goals. If we take out, whatever percentage it is, let's say, that are just these, brilliant pieces of technique that, let's be honest, not many players have, and especially in Canada, very few have. Not to say that we don't want, brilliant players, but, it's rare, right? Outside of that, we're talking about getting players who have the basic techniques down. They all can score more goals, more or less, if they apply some of the stuff that you teach, right? And I do remember from your book, you had done quite a bit of research on I think you had looked at several of the previous, World Cups, men's World Cups, right? And you had sort of you'd calculated, some stats about where on the field goals were scored, what part of the net the ball went in. These are all interesting things, and also again, kind of the techniques that were involved, right? And I think one thing that I know, it surprised me, and I remember even in your book when you wrote it, it was somewhat surprising to you, was that you had a lot of goals that weren't necessarily scored by hitting the corners or the top corners for sure. And again, a lot of goals that were scored with really, really simple techniques, like literally hitting it with the inside of the foot, like we just saw. So I don't know if you want to comment on that and some of the research you did, and what's in the book there. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and you're bang on. Simple skills, and so the question is, why are some players scoring more goals with skills than others who have the same skills? And looking at where to place the ball, things like that, percentage of goals scored in different parts of the goal, which is all in the book. A lot of us coaches already know a lot of those answers. We're telling our players, pass the ball in the net, you don't have to overhit it. In training sessions all the time, we're telling them, which corners to shoot are more likely, or where to place balls. Obviously, keeping balls low is tougher for goalies to get down to. So we do that in training. But why is it that some players are just immediately getting it? So many are not. And that's what I try and do in the course. I got to deliver a message in such a way so that once they've left the course that I run, it's just like been punched in the face, and you've just realized, wow, this is what's the way it's delivered. I guess in a way it's like a medium, delivering a punchline. I'm not good at that. Someone could tell the same joke and have the room laughing, or others tell a joke and nobody laughs. So the way I deliver the message to the players and the different points that I make, I think is what sets it apart. I probably explain that in the book, and I think you'll know the one section where I use almost a whole page to say what I want to say, with about 5 words in a photo. So, but I'm playing with the mind, because I got to get through to the player so that they make that correct decision at the last second. So I don't know if that explains. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the number of goals that are scored, and I really want to make this point to the players when they come to my course, so that they pay attention to the littlest of things. The number of goals that are scored that can be scored by a player who's never played soccer in their lives,
yeah,
believe it or not, can be as from 20 to 30%. Someone who's never played soccer in their lives, just get to the right spot, ball bounces off your shins, your knees, redirects, without any major skill, is as high as 20 to 30%. So if a player is not maybe getting to the right places and not paying attention to some of the details of the importance of timing, they're missing out on goals. And can you imagine if a baseball player, and I could show you some goals where a player, it's like sliding in the second base in baseball. For those who don't know baseball, there's a lot of sliding going on to get a point, either a home plate, and in so many goals in soccer, a player just sliding just to touch the ball to redirect it at goal. So,
I think even the corner kick that you showed from Timoshenko there, he was somewhat sliding. Right. He left his feet for sure. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the one part of the here's I'm gonna share my screen again for 1 second. Simple drill that we did at the training. You can tell we're in Canada because we're training in the snow here.
Yeah.
This is just a passing drill. How do I get rid of this thing? just passing. A lot of goals are just passes. You know, just a simple passing drill can be a goal scoring drill. Right, there they are, passing the ball, 1-2 touch. So passing drill, no players in the court, you know, treat every passing drill like a goal scoring drill, because a lot of the goals come from simple passes like we said.
Yeah. So I guess you know, I think you even in your answer you kind of you know, posed this question. So I'm going to pose it back to you. And you know, again, obviously we don't want to give away all the secrets from the book or the course, but so why is it then, you know, and can we maybe break down a little bit, you know, why is it that, you know, players who you know, have these techniques and have trained them enough, and you know, why is it that they're not scoring more goals? And maybe, you know, if I could break it up into two subcategories, I might say, well, okay, is it more related to, as you say, positioning, being in the right place at the right time, so all you need to do is stick a leg out or make a slide and you've got it? Or, you know, is there a little more, you know, on the psychology side, whether it's confidence or you know, motivation, attention, you know, kind of the psychological skills, or is it more tactics and positioning, or a combination of both, you know? So
another great question. Yeah, another great
Yeah.
question, and I like to call it 4 C's.
Yeah.
The 4 C's. The first one is, you know, consistency. A player who's going to get scouted needs to be consistent. You know, I've seen players, and I remember talking to a professional coach of the Blizzard before Bob Houghton, and I interviewed him for a project I had, and I asked him, you know, about what it takes to be a professional player, and he says, you know, I'm looking for consistency. Anybody can either score a goal or make that perfect pass once in a while, you know, 2 out of 10 times, 5 out of 10 times. But I'm going to take the player who can do it 8 or 9 out of 10 times. Can you be more consistent? And of course, a lot of that's repetition in making sure you get your techniques and skills into, you know, even a pass, you know, simple passes. It's a skill, you know, so consistency is one thing. And that takes repetition. Well, that's the first C. And I'm going to show you a quick video on that one, and we're going to go back to the comedy that I was telling you about before, and the psychology of, you know, being consistent, being good in something. And if I can find this, let me look at it differently. Oh, we gotta go back. Sorry, guys. Goodness. Go. Okay. Maybe we won't find it. Oh, here it is. All right. So let's watch. Yeah, I'm sure you all know. Oh, I'm not on screen.
You want to hit share? Yeah.
Sharing right now. Okay. So go here. How do I get the screen share again? Sorry, folks. There, we'll go there. Again, hopefully you'll get the sound on here. And we'll go here.
The dialogue so that the joke
Can you hear that?
at the right
Yep.
place, and the line that precedes it was the right line. When you do it well,
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Let's do that again. This is Jerry Seinfeld talking
Got it.
about
dialogue
comedy.
so that the joke was at the right place, and the line that precedes it was the right line. When you do it well, you don't see any of that. You see the skill of a great musician.
Mm-hmm.
When you're watching a comedian who knows what he's doing, you're just laughing and having fun, and it all seems so easy. It seems easy for the comedian, the audience is having fun, and that's what it takes so long to learn. See, what most of these guys, most of the kids that I started out with, You go up, let's say you go up on stage 5 or 10 times a week. 2 or 3 of those, you're going to do well because you're going to have a good crowd. You've kind of got a good rhythm that night, or you're focused that night or whatever. Being a professional comedian, you can't do well 2 out of 10 times and get paid for it. A professional comedian, you do well 10 out of 10. You've got to do well 10 out of 10 in different places at different times in front of different people. That takes years.
So there's there's Seinfeld.
Talking about consistency.
I wonder sometimes why they don't start. Says, well, you haven't been consistent,
Yeah.
and you need to work on that. So consistency is one thing.
I'll tell you, just to piggyback on that, John, that there's a coach that you and I both know very well, who's been on our behind the bench before, Rafael Carvajal,
Right.
who I worked with as his assistant fitness coach when he was in Uruguay, and he always used to say that the only difference between the players who started in a team and the players who didn't, typically the difference was that the players who started were the ones that made less mistakes. And the same thing between in Uruguay, he was talking about the players who would get into a first division, or a top level team versus those that were in, because we were in the second division. And, you could see sometimes that our players were, they looked like they were just as good as, we played an exhibition game once against the first division club. And, you watch the players and warm-ups and stuff, and they don't look that different. But again, it's that the players that get to the highest level, that start, and then, of course, score more goals, right? Or those are the ones that are making less mistakes. So they're more consistent. So, yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. So the second thing is confidence. The player who scores, they tend to be confident, and I think you have to be confident in many ways. I had a player who played with me when I was U18, and his name was George Klass, who's classy guy, as a matter of fact. He came over from Europe. His parents came over, and then we're playing with Wexford at the time in the old National Soccer League. And George had a booming shot, but he would score almost all the time. I remember him talking to him about, the fact that he was consistently, he'd wake up in the morning and he'd wake up and say, am I going to score 1, 2, or 3 goals today, before a game? So he had the confidence that he was going to score every game. And a lot of the players that he says, they'd be worried, I'm not. If you're not confident, that's not a good start. So you got to be confident. And even I think my LaFerrara, who's our technical director, has always told me the story about Paolo Rossi, how in '82, late Paolo Rossi, same thing. Why are you asking me if I'm going to score? Of course I'm going to score. To the reporters. So they're very confident. So you have to have confidence. That's the second C. And of course, the confidence can be shattered because, you go a few games without scoring, and, you've got to deal with a whole sorts of issues. So I'm going to just show you something else here. I can get out of here. Am I sharing the screen up there?
We can see it. Yeah. So you've got your professional.
Oh, no. Okay. Here. So this was the last Euro or World Cup. I'm not even sure. So this appeared here in once it pops up. In a second.
That's just low.
Computer's a little slow today. There it is.
Oh yeah.
This was in the I believe last World Cup or Euros.
Probably the last World Cup, because in the Euro.
Yeah. I think so.
Portugal ended up winning the whole thing. So.
Right. So this is an article in a newspaper in Toronto.
Yeah.
Across the world from where the World Cup was being held, and the headline: Ronaldo's scoring touch has gone missing. So if that's the headline here in Toronto, imagine Portugal. Poor guy.
Yeah.
So the pressure of anyone called a striker is that you're expected to score all the time. But, statistics will tell you that even the best strikers in the world are scoring once in every 2 games. I think Ronaldo is necessary, but the only ones that are almost keeping at a goal at game pace.
Yeah.
You look over history, you look at the Spanish league, how many goals are scored, and then the second place, it's a huge drop, and third and fourth place, one every 2 games or less, so, but there's this expectation, if you're the striker, you have to score. So, there's that part of, the confidence can go quite quickly if you're not scoring. Players start to, panic and try too hard, too tense. You almost have to be. The thing about a striker, you got to win balls in tight areas. You got to be tense in order to win those balls. Then you need to be like an artist. Finish. You're going from high intensity to a nice, relaxing way of on the net. So quite often players overhit balls, you see them missing. So the pressure of a striker is incredible. So that's the confidence factor.
And
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, John. Just because it's occurring to me as you're speaking that can you be consistent? Like, can you have consistency without confidence?
Yeah, everyone's going to have a dry spell. So you still got to be confident that you're doing everything right. And I think that's one of the last C's I'm going to talk about. But you got to be confident that you're doing your best. You've done everything right. And maybe, the defender made a great play on you. Be realistic. That's the common sense element. The last C actually is that, you got to understand that, sometimes you've done everything right. The goalkeeper played great. They made a fantastic save. Look at the guy pat in the back. You did everything right. If you did everything right and think that you made a mistake and are not giving the opposition, then your self-analyzing is off. And then you're going to try things that aren't how you should score. And then you're going to go into a further slump if you're not scoring. All goal scorers go through periods when you're not scoring, and then sometimes you just come in bunches. I think you'll see that with anybody. I remember Alan Shearer, he played for Newcastle's goal scoring record for Newcastle. He went I don't know how many games, 10 games without a goal, and getting to him, and coach was thinking of not playing him. And once he scored his first goal, the goal started rolling again. So, yeah, confidence. But you've got to just stay the path and understand that you've done everything you can that's right. Your preparation, mental preparation, your runs, and all that stuff. Sometimes give credit to the defense. That's the common sense part of it. The last C was the control. And I'm going to talk about emotions. If you're a striker and you get a chance to score, guaranteed, there's 3 or 4 defenders who could lose their jobs if you score. Might not get the next start if you score. So, you're going to get pulled and hacked, and you're going to be chopped to. And if you can't handle that, if you blame the referee, blame everybody else, if you can't handle that from a psychological point of view, I think you're done. You've got to. So there's a lot going on there, and I know players who will just lose it and do stupid things. I think we've seen it. Zidane, we saw that in the World Cup against Italy, where Materazzi said a few probably mean things that throw him off his game, right? And it worked. He lost it, couldn't score, but also got red carded. So you've got to have that control emotionally. It's a tough position because there's so much pressure. A low-scoring game.
And I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think having control, and again, I'm remembering reading your book. It was a few years ago, but of course, there are things like that, frustration dealing with opponents and the referee and all that. But then there's also kind of controlling the emotions around having had a chance and missed it, and how that affects you, and are you able to recover from that, and then the next chance you got a better chance of scoring, or do you not recover well from it because you can't control your emotions, and then you get 2 or 3 chances and you miss every single one, right? So I think that controlling emotion, there's probably a lot.
That's all psychological, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is, and Rafi Severo has written a book called Psychology in Soccer. I quote him a lot. He brings out all these things. Sometimes you're always negative. Negativity can cause more negativity. So there's also another book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, by Dale Carnegie, and that's not a soccer book; it's a life book.
Yeah.
But you could be your own worst enemy. Continue to get down on yourself. So I deal with different techniques where can get over that, from relaxation methods to songs that might make them get back. And I have that in the book as well. So there's all sorts of things, psychological point of view.
Yeah. So I'll segue, I guess. So we've got the 4 C's: consistency, confidence, common sense, and control. Of course, these are all psychological. They fall under the category of psychological skills, right? We talked about kind of, and I think we've sort of established it's, you don't need to take my word for it or John's word for it. I mean, you can just watch, like John showed, lots of goals, even at the top level, are not scored with very high level technique. So it's clear that, the psychological factors are having an influence on players scoring more or less goals. So now I want to ask you, you've been coaching a long time, and this has occurred to me a lot too. If we can recognize and accept the fact that psychological skills are a limiting factor for players scoring goals, and that if we train and develop those skills more, that players will score more goals, then why aren't coaches spending enough time training these psychological skills? What do you think? Or are they? I mean, I don't know. Because I don't see it as much as I think
that's a great question, because a great question. And I see, a lot of teams have goalie coaches specifically for they have maybe striker coaches, but maybe not from the psychological point of view.
Yeah.
And they have, that play experts, things like that. But, a coach, especially of a youth team, where they have deal with so many players. I mean, if you're not even getting up the field to score, none of what I do is any good.
Yeah.
So the coaches, we've got a lot of work building a strong defense, give us a chance to win, getting a chance to score through build up or whatever. So, and then just practicing the skill of hitting a ball, crossing a ball, whatever. So sometimes that psychological part, we don't have time, or maybe we don't identify it as much as maybe give it enough credit, because a lot of goals are all mental decisions. What's the decision being made in the mind of the player, which is psychology. And, we all can see the game. And I remember watching a game at a Robbie tournament, one of the biggest tournaments in the world. It used to be, kind of got tournaments started. There was 2 U9 games going on at the same time. And the 4 coaches, there's 2 fields, and the benches were in the middle. So I was watching 2 teams on one field, 2 on the other field, and the 4 coaches, 3 of the 4 coaches were just screaming their heads off. And I remember one coach, the ball went in, across the ball, the player ran as hard as he could, just couldn't get there. Coach was cursing that player, pulled him off. And I'm saying to myself, I don't think Superman could have got to that ball, you know, with wings. And the coach isn't seeing that. He's just blaming a kid. But if he really watched the game closely, he saw that that kid ran as hard as he can and started at the right time. The cross was a decent cross, but it's just impossible to get to. But the coach didn't realize that. He's cursing the kid. Imagine if you're that kid. This was U11, U12. So 3 or 4 of those coaches were continuously cursing their players for missing. Sometimes we as coaches, the angle that we're sitting at, watching the game, we can't see properly. Not that our eyes are a problem. We're not, our depth perception, speed of the ball, speed of play, we're not getting it right ourselves. So it's very difficult maybe to pick out the right things to coach if we don't get it correctly ourselves. Now, of course, when we watch the pros, you know, you see like we just saw that goal from Ukraine, you know, you see them from 3 or 4 different angles and you can see, you know, what was right, what was wrong. But to make that decision on the field, so the coaches sometimes are having a problem. I hate to say that, but, you know, you need to just be careful when you criticize a player for missing a chance that they couldn't have possibly got. So, yeah, that's one of the issues with coaching, is sometimes we don't identify it correctly. Now, if you're that player on the field who, for example, does the wrong thing, or because you see something different on the field than a high level camera. So I'm going to just show you something on that, if that's okay.
While you do that, I'd like to comment just from your example. You know, what occurred to me is, you know, a coach yelling and screaming at a young player. What does that do for confidence? And then, you know, doesn't that also violate the, you know, the self-control, right? I mean, like that, I think this is real basic coaching stuff before we even get into, you know, psychological skills training. You know,
Absolutely.
So anyway, but yeah, it's let's hope that things have changed since then. That was probably a long time ago, wasn't it?
So I'm going to say it was maybe 6 years ago. So it wasn't
okay, not that long ago.
You know.
Okay, all right.
So let's go to share the screen. Where are we here? And so this is this keeps popping up. All right, so we're going to take a look at this is a chance. The United States. This was I believe it's Confederations Cup final. United States actually has a 2-0 lead on Brazil. South Africa.
I remember this game. Yeah.
Right? And so this was a shock. And so here's what happened.
Spector's throw.
Well, he's not great, but
Here's
Yeah.
DeBenedictis. Now Haber. Bucciarelli, the captain of this team. Donovan. In again. Oh my word, there were 2 waiting and both onside.
well, there's an opportunity that it was Altidore that had to score a goal. If you watch him closely, you'll see that he hesitates in his run. So what happened was he misjudged the flight of the ball. So that's where I like to talk about getting in the zone. For a player to be in the zone, totally focused, give a whole bunch of techniques on how to do that and how to get rid of all the noise and distractions on in this particular case, the cross. So Altidore is up here somewhere, and if you watch him closely, just keep your eye on this part of the screen.
Want to freeze?
This is a cross. Right, so that's him there. He had hesitated his run because he thought that this player was going to get to the ball. If he had just stayed focused, stayed in the zone, this was an easy goal for him. But because he wasn't totally focused, lost concentration for that split second, and he's holding his head because he knows he made a huge mistake in tracking the ball. So how do we fix that? not easy, to totally focus for the full 90 minutes. But, if there's this whole play took about 5 seconds to develop. So in the last 5 seconds, he lost concentration. It cost him a goal. He would, the United States would have probably gone up 3-0. But, going into halftime, Brazil was only down 2 goals, and Brazil, they came back and won 3-2. So one mistake, to me, that's a psychological mistake. He knows how to head a ball. We have to teach her how to do that. What happened there? So from a psychology point of view, that's a big mistake that Altidore made in that situation. Here's another mistake. Let's go to take a look at this. I don't know if you can hear the audio, right?
Yep.
So here, this was a few years ago.
Mucho más por dentro. México había tenido mejor posesión. Ahora no la tiene. Mira Godín, mira Godín, mira Godín. ¿Quién es Godín? La toca para Cavani. ¡Qué golazo están armando! No me digan, la tiene Roland.
Oh.
Es que Roland es otra cosa. Este Roland, mira Godín. Godín, ¿quién era? ¿Quién era, doctor? Beckenbauer, Pasarela. Enzo. No, pero un jugador impresionante, doctor. ¿Quién era? Miguel Obdulio. Aparte es una jugada increíble, ¿no? Se empieza a quitar gente de encima, Godín. No pierde la vertical, aquí lo está volviendo. Va por Hernández, que. Gracias Reyes, gracias Herrera, gracias Márquez. Muy bien Cavani, es de derecha, ¿no? Es de pata derecha.
So, making a wrong decision, it can cost you a chance to score. I actually made two mistakes there. I'm not going to go into it too much detail, but the pressure is now that the announcer's even laughing at you.
From my time in Uruguay, I know that when somebody says it's a pasarela, that's a problem.
Is that not a good word?
It's not a bad word, but it's
a bad word.
Yeah, it's a mistake, right? Yeah.
Right. So again, the pressure of scoring, but making that split second, the wrong decision. Is he not in the zone? What I try to do, watch baseball. Believe it or not, soccer and baseball have a lot of similarities. People don't think so. They like to look at other sports, but from a psychological point of view, even an excitement, if you're trying to explain to someone who's not a soccer fan in North America, use baseball. Baseball can be a pretty boring sport at times, but the anticipation of the player at bat to score a goal on every pitch, that anticipation is what captures the audience in baseball. And so a 1-0 game in soccer, if you're explaining to someone who doesn't love the sport, just refer to baseball. It's a 3-2 pitch. That next pitch could be a goal. It might be the only goal that wins you the game. They might get it a little bit. But in baseball, because the game is so slow, and there's so much statistics, the manager before every pitch is giving all sorts of signals, right? Say, okay, expect maybe a fastball inside of the plate, high or low. So if the batter knows what type of pitch he's going to get, he has a better chance of hitting the ball. So what I try to do in the way I present my course to the players is I want to be that manager in the head of the player. So when a certain type of ball comes, you're already expecting it and you already know what you should do to give you a better percentage of scoring. So sometimes it's not the best thing to do, but if 4 to 5 times, if you do this, you'll probably score. So I'm trying to be the manager in the head. So by the end of the course, and when you read the book, hopefully, the decisions you make are going to be clear. Because again, that's psychology. It's all about decision making. In the clip, bad decision. Well,
I want to touch on something, and I guess it's interesting that of course the title of your book is The Last 9 Seconds, and in your you know, your video example, the first one with Altidore, although I'm sure you could probably apply it to the second one with the Uruguayan player as well. But you mentioned, as you were describing Altidore's, you know, let's say lapse in concentration and all that, you know, the hesitancy on the run, that you said, you know, it was more or less the last 5 seconds or so. I heard you say it. And so, you know, when you think about it, obviously these are plays that, you know, that end up in a cross and a chance to score, but there's 9 seconds or 4 seconds or 5 seconds that lead up to that cross. And so, you know, I guess, like, obviously, you know, that being the title of your book, it's that window of time that's really important. And, you know, again, without giving away the secrets of the course, you know, what are the things that players really need, you know, to you know, let's say maximize or optimize that time window and get the best result out of it?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Like I say, quite often it's not even 9 seconds. It could be 2 seconds. Yeah. In fact, I think we saw a game in Euro. I think it was Scotland in their last game. When a cross came in, I wish I had that replay, but I don't. Cross came in, and the player should have maybe tried a diving header into the ball. And then there was another one where he should have used his right foot, but decided to use the inside of the right foot, decided to use the outside of the foot. So it's the decision that takes place in a second sometimes of what to do. And you know, things happen so fast in soccer. So, you know, what skill do I use? Do I use the inside of the foot? Do I use the outside of the foot? Big part of it is, where do I go? And specifically, where do I go? Coaches are very general, but there's some very specific things that I like to use. Where to go, how to get there, and when to get there. And then a lot of the goals, you know, for example, in crosses, I say there's 3 places to go, but in many cases, the player has to get there by, you know, outsmarting a defender. So I use an example. I mean, sometimes I get players say, well, you know, I'm not scoring because I don't have Iniesta or Modric or Pirlo to send me that perfect pass. So it's never my fault, right? Well, quite often it's not necessarily, you know, to have a great player to give you the perfect pass, but that great player who's giving you the perfect pass isn't going to cause more goals if the player who's supposed to score can't outsmart and outwit the person who's covering them. So, and sometimes that takes a little check. Sometimes it takes throwing the player off, getting on their blind side. You know, sometimes it's a decision to outsmart someone, and then all of a sudden you've you know, found those inches where a perfect pass can be the difference. But you haven't been able to make maybe that outsmart someone who's closest to covering you. Screen again, and we have, where's it here? I think it's this one. Maybe it's this. Right. The key here is staying on side. It just passes it into the net. So here's the same goal, right?
Yeah.
So this player here, stay on side, made just a small, as you can see him there, he's stepping inside, stay on side, but also to freeze the nearest player. So now he's home free. So he made that little move. Oh. Okay. Just to freeze this player, that sometimes is so important.
And again, if I'm, you know, a little bit paraphrasing and summarizing a bit too, these are skills that can be taught, right?
I mean, what did he do? He ran and he passed the ball.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything super spectacular that he needed to do. So
I don't mean the necessarily the finish. I mean, it was a good finish, but what I mean is the ability to outsmart a defender, the holding. Yeah. These are things that can be taught, correct?
Yeah, I think they can. And and sometimes it does take. The one thing about I think in North America, players are maybe not playing enough on the streets. When you're playing on the streets, there's a couple of things that happen. First of all, when you're going out there to play with a bunch of friends, and you get out there, you're not saying, so say you're 12-year-old kid. Well, you can't play because you're 14. You can't play because you're 10. Whoever's in the neighborhood plays. And so there's 10 years old, 14-year-old. So young ones learn from the old ones, but the old ones are trying things on the young ones. And they're doing this over and over and over. And at some point, they're going to realize that, in order to score or in order to get a pass away, they got to outsmart somebody. So it's a little bit of repetition in that. That's a little harder to teach. So because we don't have that as often as we would like here in North America, where players are just playing 6 hours a day, I try and say, okay, what if we can read the motion of the nearest player? What are they doing? So if you're stepping with your right foot, then you have to step with your left foot. Can we read that motion a little bit so that we can get a ball off, or we try and speed up the learning process by using the mind to read step by step the nearest opponent, and then the goalkeeper, because the goalkeeper can only do so much. If I can try and teach a player that here's what the goalie is going to be doing, you don't even have to look. This is what he's doing. And if you can predict what the keeper is going to do before the keeper does it, then you have a better chance of scoring. That's the last part, really. I think the rest is just the right decisions and where to go, part of foot or head or whatever to use to get there. Certainly the next step would be, can we read the opponent?
I definitely agree with you. I think a lot of whether it's street soccer or free play or the kind of the unstructured soccer is really an excellent way to develop better decision making through better ability to read and predict. And even some of my colleagues at the university that are into the scientific side of researching motor learning and skill acquisition, there's some really interesting evidence to show that top level players in soccer and in many other sports are really, really good, much better than other players anyway, at lower levels, really, really good at predicting what's going to happen based on whatever it is. In soccer, it might be based on the way that a player opens up right before they hit a pass or a long ball. Goalkeepers looking at penalty shots. In baseball, it's about what the pitcher does with his arm or shoulder before the ball is released. So that, of course, ability to read the play, as you said, that can be trained organically. And I know that in addition to training it organically, of course, in John's book and in John's course, then you can get some good advice and special help with some of those abilities of reading the play. So I think it's a fascinating topic. It's a little bit past 3 o'clock now, and I know I have to get going. Here's a question though, which I do see here. Okay, from TJ. Let's try to get to this one, and then maybe we can wrap it up. If coaches wanted to include the psychological factor in training, how much time should it be aimed at? And he's asking for the age 8 to 14. It's a broad age range. And any one particular drill you might suggest, John. So this is just we're asking you to give a couple of your secrets away right at the end here.
Yeah, so if he's talking about 8 to 14, let's not even get into psychology at that age.
Fair enough.
Because and what I say is, if a kid is, believe it or not, a 13-year-old girl is maybe where we can start, but a 14-year-old boy, girls seem to be psychologically a little bit ahead.
Yeah, a little bit
of boys at that age. So I wouldn't get into psychology at that age. You know, let them have fun. You don't have to overthink things. Let them play as much as possible. One of my friends who was on our behind the bench, Carl Duazian from California, said that, you know, teach them how to just start up a game in their neighborhoods so that they play, and because once you have the love of the game and the fun of the game, without too much coaching, then when they're at that age at 14 and up, where you start to get into whether it's psychology and more specific fitness and things like that, you know, they're already loving the game by then. If we get too technical, or in terms of all this other stuff, below 14 years of age, I think maybe that's not the right time for technology. They got to work on their basic skills, techniques, things like that. So, yeah, 8 to 14. I know parents who sometimes are just trying to do too much for the kids at that age, and then by the time they're 14, 15, they've had enough, and other interests pop up, and then they end up quitting the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think like with fitness, like with a lot of the work that we do, you know, the psychological aspect, it's a little bit better when players are a little bit older. And I know that's the kind of the focus of your book and your course as well, of course, is not so much in that age category.
Yeah. So you know, I do talk about player development in the book.
Yeah.
And basically it's about making kids love the game at the youngest of ages, because, you know, I've always heard the comment of, you know, you should always be trying to play up. But, you know, your body learns by being successful.
Yeah.
Just like when we were babies, you know, we didn't know how to pick up a spoon and put food in our mouth. You know, we did it over and over and over. But because the food tasted good, you were successful. That's how you learn. You have to be successful. So when you're playing small-sided games and you're playing with inferior opponents, you're more likely to be successful. You're going to pick things up instinctively.
Yeah.
So, you know, playing against inferior opponents sometimes is not a bad thing. It's part of it.
Absolutely. All right, so we are out of time here. I'll say thank you again, John, for you know, an excellent discussion of, as I said, what I think is really a fascinating topic. And we will, of course, you know, we'll go ahead and post the video of this discussion for all of our members and everyone else that wants to watch. And we'll also go ahead and share, you know, some more information, you know, about John's book and John's course. And maybe briefly, just before we go, I'll type it in the chat. Do you want to let everybody know, John, you know, where can they find more information about your book and your course online?
Yeah, the website is goldengoalscoring.com. goldengoalscoring.com.
Okay.
Even the goldengoalscoringcourse.com, it'll get you to the same place. One of the things I just wanted to mention is that some of the sessions that I've done in the past, which I show a lot of videos when I've done the courses, but YouTube blocks them because they're not copyrighted.
Yeah.
So what we're going to start to do, and this is not just for my sessions, but for all the sessions we've done on Behind the Bench, having replay sessions where we'll be able to replay them at a certain time, where they won't be blocking any of the videos. But, you know, for people who haven't seen some of our Behind the Bench sessions, such as the ones that you've been on or hosted, you can see them at a different time without becoming a member. So that's one of the things we're going to start next week. I think you're on.
Yeah, we're going to get it going with myself and Coach Farzad. Yeah.
Great. And we've just confirmed Tadeo from a Brazilian coach who runs a Brazilian academy for a couple of weeks. So
great.
Yeah, that's look forward to that. We'll be sending emails.
All right. Okay. So thank you everyone for your attendance as well. Thanks again, John. And you know, a reminder, I always like to close these off just by saying, you know, help us out however you can. You know, of course, you know, like, share, comment on the videos when you see them. Let your friends and colleagues in the coaching community know If you're not a member already, please consider doing so and spread the word to all of your fellow coaches. Help us to continue to do what we're doing. We're not stopping. We've got, as John said, lots of plans of exciting stuff coming up, including later on in the year, another online summit, and hopefully with things starting to pick up, around the country, live and in person, we're looking at 2022, another convention to build on the great one that we had back in 2019. So thank you again, everybody, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, Richard.
All right. Bye-bye.